Hey, welcome back to Maximum Leadership, guys. Glad you're tuning in on our latest YouTube video. Today, got a special guest for us. My man Colby here. He's going to sit down and we're going to discuss leadership a little bit and kind of pick his brain on some of his leadership attributes and some of the stuff he looks for in the leadership realms. So, Colby, again, thanks for joining us today, man. I really appreciate it. But hey, why don't you introduce yourself real quick? Tell us a little bit about you.
Yeah, right on, man. Thank you. Big honor. Excited to be here, man. Appreciate the invitation. So, my name's Colby. I work as a men's health coach. Is my primary use of time, I guess you could say. Outside of that, I practice Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. I'm a former semi-professional rugby player, father, husband, coaching a lot of people and leading in a lot of different capacities. And so, yeah, man, I'm super excited to dive in.
Right on, dude. Well, hey, I appreciate you joining us, like I mentioned. But hey, let's dive right into it. You mentioned that you were semi-pro rugby players. So talk to me a little bit about that and some of the leadership tactics that you saw or experienced in the rugby realm.
Yeah, awesome, man. So I played with the Glendale Raptors, now known as the Colorado Raptors in the MLR. So they're now a full-on professional club. And I was playing back in, 2011, 2012, 2013. And I was lucky to have really in the rugby world, 3 really fantastic mentors or leaders. And I would say, man, all the stuff that I've learned about leadership or just kind of leading yourself, I've picked up from the mentors and, men and women in my life. And so in the rugby world, man, when I started playing in college, I had played football a lot like you, but I absolutely hated it. I was terrible at it. And I thought that it's what I wanted. I got to college at Mesa, back when it was Mesa State back in the day. And, went to one meeting and I was like, for the football team, I was like, yeah, this isn't for me. This is way too much work. This is going to be crazy. So, that first freshman initiation week, walking through campus, and I remember seeing a big old party, big old group of dudes playing beer pong in the neighborhood right by, I think it was by the football field, the practice field. Turns out as a rugby team and as a freshman, I was like, hey, cool, you guys are partying? Let's go hang out and see what this is about. And they just brought me right under their wing and they said, listen, man, you can come here and hang out, but you got to come to practice tomorrow if you're going to drink all our beer for free. I was like, that's a fair trade. All right, we'll do that. So ended up meeting my first coach, the very first kind of rugby mentor I had. His name was Asayuki Saito, Asa for short. He was from Japan. He played professional rugby in Australia, and he had ended up in Grand Junction for nursing school. And so he was our coach, and he was the one kind of teaching us all this different stuff. And his style of bringing me up, at least, was like, I don't know, there's like a lot of room for creativity and learning the sport and figuring out, my own game, if you will. Switch headphones 1 sec.
Sure.
Can you hear me all right?
I got you, bud.
So he just brought me up with this very much like loving, caring style. He would like bring me into his house to eat dinner and watch rugby films, right? He would be sending me YouTube videos of all this stuff. And, because I was brand new to the sport. And that was profound, man. That really just ignited a whole new culture, number one, because he was from Japan and we'd go to his house and, he would bring a lot of his culture into his cooking and his personality and all that. So that was pretty cool to see from my perspective. But beyond that, man, the next big level up was when I played for Glendale, and our head coach at the time, his name was Mark Bullock. I'm pretty sure he's still the director of performance and the director of rugby there, but he's not involved in a direct day-to-day coaching capacity. And he was much more like old school, like gridiron football, put in the reps, very structured practices, from here to here, we're doing these things, had stations and all this. I'd imagine that's what college football was like. And I never made it that far, but it was very, very dialed in, right? And we would work these things called EDDs, everyday drills, EDDs. And that's how basically our team would start training. And everyday drills in rugby are working on like the skinny skills of your position. So for me, it was like catching and passing, decision-making, trying to spot gaps, and just like the real basic stuffs of our position. And literally we would spend the first 10 minutes every practice just working those patterns and working those skills. And so that was pretty cool because that got the skills of passing, catching, and decision-making almost like hardwired as like an instinct. And so that's part of the reason why I think Glendale continues to have great success, man. It's just the culture of excellence is way up here. So beyond that though, man, I mean, like outside of rugby, I played for, I want to say almost a decade. But then, ended up like a lot of guys, I had to make a decision of like, do I want to make a living or do I want to play rugby the rest of my life? And so
Sure.
I decided to get into what I'm doing now. So.
That's awesome, man. It's nice when you can have two different leaders like that, of two very different leadership styles that can really mold somebody. So that's awesome that you got to experience that. So I'm going to take a little dive here into some characteristics of leadership that you look for, and then we'll come back into how you implement those characteristics into what you're doing now.
Yeah.
So as you're interacting with a lot of folks, because you interact with a ton of different people, which is awesome. It's what drew me to you. What are some characteristics that you look for in a leader? Like, what are some of the things that you're like, man, I got to follow that guy or that gal because they do this?
Yeah, that's a really good question. The first thing that comes to mind is just being accountable, I would say. And maybe that's low hanging fruit, or maybe that's a cop out, but like, I'm talking about accountability on like a soul level. You know what I mean? Not like,
Sure.
Did you show up to work out? Are you doing this? But like, are you a good person down at the heart level, right? Are you working on your stuff? And so for me to really get behind somebody and really like give them my energy, because man, when I commit to somebody, I'm all in. Like I've learned this about myself as I kind of grow older. That's why coaching is a really good fit for me. When I work with somebody, like we're like buddies for a while, right?
Sure.
This is just my personality. It's how I like to be involved. And so the same goes for leadership, probably the main role model or the main mentor in my life when it comes to like maybe athletic, but even like business and even maybe a little bit about manhood and parenthood is my brother-in-law. His name's Mo. And Mo, man, D1 athlete. He played outside linebacker at West Virginia University back when they were, I think, the number 2 team in the country. This was 2005 through 09 when they were making their run. I was in college. I remember that. So Mo just like leads by example. The dude, I remember meeting him when he was dating my sister in college, and really, I don't know, something about his energy was really like magnetic. I was like, what is it about this dude? He really balanced kind of like the alpha male, don't fuck with me, with the like playfulness, fun, teddy bear thing, if that kind of makes sense. So like he's a stone cold killer on the mats in jiu-jitsu, no question, but he's also like one of the kindest humans that I know. And so I think that, leaders need to be able to wield power in multiple ways, not just through aggression and anger, but also through empathy and understanding. You know what I'm saying? So in coaching, it's a lot of trying to understand and really feel what my clients are going through. And if I can feel that, I can ask myself, oh, well, what would I do in this situation? If I were, just had a baby and my life was going crazy and COVID hit and my business crashed, would I turn to food for comfort too? Absolutely. Right. So then it's like, once I can empathize, that builds trust. And that trust, dude, is like, it's like gold. Once you get it, it's, it takes the relationship to a whole nother level.
Right on, man. Yeah. It's pretty amazing how, a good quality leader brings in all those different characteristics that you were just talking about. And, you mentioned there towards the end, trust. That's a huge one. That's something that I definitely try to do as well with those folks who are following me, who I'm training, who I'm coaching. So you and I are on the same level there, man, which is awesome.
Yeah.
So without really diving into too many details, and definitely don't want any names by any means, but what kind of experiences have you had with a bad leader? And then what was kind of the result of that?
Man, this is a really good question. So Little backstory. So I'm an entrepreneur now. I run my own business. I will never go back to working for somebody else. I'm a pretty bad employee is what I've learned for over the years. I say it jokingly, people laugh, but I'm like, I'm not a good employee. I'm selfish. I'm really motivated when I'm with the right leader.
Sure.
So I had an experience. It was, remember, man, probably 4 years ago, I had been coaching. My rugby career was kind of wrapping up. I was done playing and I needed to like get a real job. So I was running a CrossFit gym at the time, and myself and the owners decided to kind of part ways. I was getting burned out on the industry and wanted to explore maybe some other options. And so I got into marketing for a technology company, and it's in the strength and conditioning space, really solid product, really solid idea. And I would say for the first probably 2 years, I was just totally sold out for this team and for the leaders specifically. And maybe, this is kind of coming full circle for me. What I said previously about this was like a good leader to me can really balance aggression and anger, but also with empathy and understanding and love.
Yeah.
And I think that my relationship with this person got to a point where it was just anger and aggression, for him to get me to change my behaviors. And I wasn't being a good employee by any means, right? But I also had just had my first son. My dog had just died, and I didn't know how to deal with any sort of traumatic, it's a traumatic events of a death, but also having a newborn son totally upending my marriage, my workout life, my fitness, my health, my sleep, like my whole life was dropped on a bombshell is what it felt like. And so, for him not to acknowledge it or to empathize with it, really made me mad and vindictful. But ultimately, I've had, like I said, good role models and good mentors in my life to be able to be like, course correct and help me think logically when I'm thinking emotionally, when I'm reacting out of like anger or frustration or fear is a big one, right? Being scared. And so what came of that was during those 2.5 years I was with the company, man, I grew a ton. I up-leveled, I grew, I got a lot of value out of it. And ultimately, I think the reason I'm successful in my business today is because of like paying my dues and kind of eating shit for a few years and really learning and accepting that I'm not, maybe I didn't have all the skills or I wasn't really as good as I thought I was in a lot of areas. And nobody wants to face that. That's not cool. And so one of the things this leader did was help me face those areas. And there was a really clear curriculum and criteria for assessing performance within this culture. And that was valuable to me. I thrive in stuff like that, like real structured athletic stuff, man. That's where I do really well. And so got to the point anyways, man, the relationship turned toxic and I decided, I got to get out of here for the sake of my heart because I just am angry all the time. And so I left, I started my own business and here we are today. There's a lot more in between that little period, but here we are.
For sure.
Yeah.
It's amazing how, in my experience, and it sounds like in your experience, that where we have these awesome leaders that we really connected with, that we grew with. But man, sometimes those rough leaders that, they're not bad people. They're just a bad leader fit for us, but how they can really impact our lives as well.
I came to find out that he was removed as CEO a few months after I had left.
Kidding.
Yeah. Wow. Which for him, I'm sure is really heartbreaking because he had started this business.
Yeah.
But for me, there was like a little degree of like, man, why couldn't this have happened a few months earlier and our relationship could heal,
For sure.
So.
Yeah. And that's definitely, that's a bummer for him. So hopefully that, he took that experience and learned.
Oh, he did.
And grew. And
knowing him, absolutely. No question.
Yeah. So, I bet that was, traumatic experience, but I bet you became a better leader for it.
Yeah, absolutely. So, absolutely.
Now, you mentioned you have two kids? Two boys?
Two boys, yep.
All right. How old are they?
Hayes is going to be 4, and Sammy is going to be 1. So they're like coming up on it, man. I'm 3.5 right now, and then Sammy's 1 in about, 3 weeks.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome, man. So
I'm not an old man like you, man.
I know, man, with the 12 or with the 13 and the 11-year-old at home, it's crazy. So, talking about that, with the 2 little ones and upbringing, what are some things that you're doing to teach them leadership, even at a young age? Is there anything that you're doing specifically with them to encourage them to be leaders and encourage them to learn leadership skills?
Yeah, dude, definitely. I think so. Maybe not consciously, but like I'm just thinking of Hayes, my older son. Sammy, my younger, really like just wants to play with him all the time, right? He's now at a point where he can walk around and run, and he still gets knocked on his butt with the gentlest tap. He doesn't have that balance game down yet. And so, good connection here is Mo, the mentor I was talking about earlier, was pivotal in helping Hayes feel comfortable getting into a pool, feeling comfortable in water. And it was just like, having the other kids play gentle around him because he was a little sketched out about getting in the water. And Mo observed that and saw that. And he was able to, have his kids chill out for just a little bit, let Hayes feel comfortable, and make it a secure space for him. And so I think Hayes now understands that a little bit. And so for him with his little brother, I try to do a good job of like, letting him play, letting him a rough house. Absolutely. But also setting really firm boundaries around what's acceptable and what's not acceptable in terms of like being a big brother, right? Because big brother, he's going to just be held to a different standard than Sam, just by the virtue of him being a little bit older, right? I'm going to expect him to hold a higher standard. And as Sammy grows up, he's going to be held to that same standard, but I can't hold a 4-year-old and a 1-year-old to the same standard. You know what I'm saying? It's like,
Oh, absolutely.
One of them still poops their pants, and the other one, is like totally thriving. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, yeah. So really, man, like trying to set the context for Hayes. I think he's about to go into a phase where he really wants to start testing the boundaries. And for me, that's going to be hard because I'm going to have to, again, just be really clear in my communication of what's okay and what's not okay. Like, it's okay to like walk, good example, going through the zoo. And I don't know what that is. Sorry.
No worries.
So going to the zoo and like looking at the animals, something not acceptable is going to be like climbing up all over and trying to like run around like a madman between people. You know what I'm saying? So just one example that I think is, I see happening with my friend's son, and he does a great job of just being like, hey, dude, no, that's not okay. So,
Right.
Setting clear boundaries, setting clear standards, man, is probably honestly where most of my focus goes.
There you go. Yeah, that's awesome, man. And you're gonna see, speaking because I'm like 8 years ahead of you in that department, you're gonna see that, your tactics change as they get older. And you hit the nail on the head, man. Like the leadership requirements, if you will, that I have with my older boy who's 13, you betcha they're a little bit different than my boy who's 11.
Yeah.
But you can guarantee that as that 11-year-old ages, those requirements get different.
You know what else, man, is really kind of missed opportunity, I'll say. There's probably a better word there, but like, athletics for me kind of served as a rite of passage in a way into manhood, kind of. Rugby hazing was like just a lot of alcohol and a lot of like stupid stuff. And so, I don't think you use the word hazing, right? I don't know that maybe that's the right word, but like there's a rite of passage, right? To become a starter on a team. Like you've earned it amongst your peers to be one of the best. They're essentially saying of these 50 guys on a team, we select, you, and you, and you're the ones who are going to lead us. And so there is this rite of passage, right? And so, I kind of sense that in the rugby world. I'm fearful that like that stuff's going to be gone, like the brotherhoods that are formed in sports, because without going into details for fear of like getting sued at some point, like there was some nonsense that we did, man, no question. And so looking at my sons growing up, like a profound moment of my life was when I went through an official rite of passage into manhood. It was through an organization called the Mankind Project. Okay. And literally their whole thing is about creating mature, emotionally stable, strong, caring men, really. Helping men step into that and get over some of the BS and get over some of the stories they tell themselves about why they're hurt and why they can't do certain stuff. And so I guess what I'm trying to say is that like it's kind of a missed opportunity in our society that this isn't more prevalent, especially amongst like, Because, I mean, think about it in your life. Did you have any sort of rite of passage coming out outside of sports?
I really didn't. And it's interesting you bring that up because one thing that I did this year for my boy who turned 13 back in February is I had a ceremony for him. I created an evening where, he was tested a little bit mentally and physically and made him go on a big hike. And, through his hike, he ran into some of the mentors in his life and they got to talk to him about what it means to be a man and grow into a man.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
And
right?
yeah,
So what do you think he picked up from that experience? Number one, my dad cares about me a lot. To put this whole thing together, right?
Yep. I think he picked up all these different ideas because all of his, let's see, we had 5 mentors and 5 leaders that spoke into his heart that night. And he started to pick each one of those out a little bit. And now he's developing his own style of leadership. And, you can see it. He changed a little bit. And it'll be interesting to see. I'd love to sit down with him one time, maybe doing something like this and talk to him about that experience. Because,
Awesome.
the other thing we did is I got it from a book titled Raising a Modern Day Knight, because medieval times, who was the manliest of men, right? It was the knights, and so how to raise a modern day knight. It was a great book. So if anybody needs a good read about how to raise sons, let me know and I can get you that book. But yeah, it's interesting you brought that up. So we'll talk more about that as your sons get older. And my 11-year-old, he gets it here in a couple years. So it'll be interesting to watch.
Yeah.
So, kind of bringing it to a close here, Colby, what are some of the things that you are doing to improve your leadership skills?
Yeah, great question, man. I try to push myself consciously to just past the edge of what I'm capable of.
Sure.
You know what I'm saying? Like in a couple different domains. In the athletic world, I just got my blue belt in jiu-jitsu and now I'm like held to a higher standard as a blue belt than a white belt. It's quite a bit higher. I'm like expected to know what the hell I'm doing, kind of.
For sure.
I still get beat all the time, right? That doesn't mean I'm not getting beat. I'm definitely getting my butt kicked, but it's like I need to be in a position where I can teach other white belts now. So I guess, stepping just outside my comfort zone, right? In business, COVID hit, personal training business shut down. I'm like, all right, cool. I know how to help people with nutrition. And so I'm going to pivot. I'm going to build the perfect product for the exact person. You and I talked about this a little bit.
Yeah.
And I'm like way outside the edge of my comfort zone, right? I'm used to training people one-on-one in a gym, but I'm transitioning my business now, trying to roll with the circumstances. Relationally, me and my wife and I are working through some stuff in each of our individual pasts around sexuality, around relationships, around intimacy and love and all these different things. And it doesn't feel good to go to those places, but ultimately, the healing that has occurred in our relationship and in our marriage is just like feeding me, right? And making this relationship even better. And so all of this, man, of just like never really being totally complacent, I enjoy kicking back once a month, having a few too many beers, hanging out with the boys and just like life is good. But other than that, man, I try to be switched on and I try to be focused and make sure that I'm helping people and adding value, because that is the only way that I will survive in this world.
Sure.
Right? Is by doing that, man. And so really, man, just honestly, just trying to show up authentic, flaws and all. Like I'm not perfect by any stretch of the imagination. Just go through my Facebook page. You can find some great stuff.
Right.
Yeah. So yeah, man, it really is just about trying to consciously improve myself and just stay on that grind, man, on that grind.
Well, that's awesome, man. You mentioned a couple characteristics there that, I know I look for in a leader, and that's, being there and caring for people. And guess what? Knowing that, yeah, we're not all perfect. We're going to make mistakes, even in those leadership roles. And I think that's absolutely valuable and, definitely vital to a leader to admit, say, hey, we're going to learn something new and we might stumble along the way. So, because just like you, man, I'm nowhere near that, but as long as I can make a difference in people's lives, just like you, hey, I'm going to be happy. And as long
You're
as I
doing it, man. You're a coach.
keep going forward.
You're impacting lives, man. I remember my high school football coach, Al Talbot. Like, he was great. He taught me about hard work in the weight room. Like, that's what I picked up from him.
Yep.
And so to this day, and I mean, shit, I love working out, right? It's part of me. So you're impacting lives, my friend. I guarantee it.
Well,
Either positive or negative, but you're impacting them.
That's awesome. Well, hey, man, I appreciate you taking about 20 minutes here and sitting down and talking with me a little bit about leadership and picking your brain. And for those of you out there watching this video, man, if you guys need a little bit of help in that nutrition world, reach out to my man Colby here. He's one heck of a coach. He'll be able to help you through this, whatever you're going through, and he's got a lot of different techniques. So definitely reach out to me and I can get you in touch with him, and he'll be able to help you out. So, hey, man, any last closing words for us here, Colby?
Nah, man, just go out there, add value, be a good person, and do your best.
There you go. Well, hey, guys, thanks for tuning in to this edition of Maximum Leadership on YouTube. And, hey, we're going to keep moving forward. We're going to keep developing ourselves as leaders and see what we can do to make a positive impact on our society. So appreciate you guys tuning in. Colby, thank you again. I really appreciate your time, and we'll see you guys soon. All right. See you next time.